All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I want to be really mindful of folks' time. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Kelly Rodriguez, and I am the Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs. In that role, I oversee our Master of Legal Studies program. And I've been with Seattle University School of Law for about 4 years, overseeing that program. And I've loved every minute of it, love chatting with some of our alums. Um, I'm also a graduate of Seattle University School of Law. I graduated in 2014 with my JD and Masters of Sports Administration and Leadership. And I've been on campus for about, oh gosh, like ever since graduation. So about 10 years now, working as faculty and staff. Um, and I would love to just jump right in and have our attendees introduce themselves. We are going to ask you both to share a little bit about your professional background and what led you to kind of the MLS program, especially in the context of this compliance and risk management, because there's several MLS programs out there. So yeah, Anne, if you want to kick us off, that'd be great.
Yeah, I always seem to go first because I am alphabetically
Yes.
challenged in that way. I'm Anne, a class of 2021, and I graduated with the compliance and risk management focus, obviously, and my time at Seattle U was spent in cybersecurity because that's what I have been doing my entire career. My daughter likes to say since the last century, just to make me feel old. I started doing this in security, in the security field in 1998. I was a Unix security administrator. And then I just kind of went from there. And so I ended up in payment cybersecurity for some of the largest service providers. And when I say payments, I mean, specifically credit cards. And so I worked with the PCI-SSC, which is the standards council that actually writes the security standards for payments. And I found myself working for a cybersecurity organization right when IAPP started being developed and privacy was coming out. And then, so I said, man, I really want to understand the legal side of this more because I could see where it was going, that this was all going to have like a legal impact. And that was the fall of 2019. So I had one awesome semester of moving around, and then suddenly everything went virtual. And so what I ended up spending my time doing at Seattle University was focusing on privacy for children because that was the rise of every child on the internet using Google Classroom, and I decided to make that my capstone. And I created a web page. It was up for several years before I finally just let it fall away. But children's privacy is coming up more and more every day, even though I'm in the payments industry. We hear things all the time in the news about Discord, things that were created for children that aren't necessarily safe for children. And so it's still a passion of mine. But payments pays the bills. So I pay attention to both sides of it. But I chose Seattle U specifically because there was a professor there who reached out to me and said, you would be perfect for this program. This is something that I think would really work for you. And I had an office in Seattle at the time, even though I was living in Texas because I worked remotely wherever computers took me. And Seattle U, I think, was one of the best decisions I made for my career, which I guess we'll talk about later. But
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate the introduction. Danielle.
Thanks for having me today. My name is Danielle Schager-Gardner. I call myself the unusual candidate for the MLS program. Kind of a fun joke, but my background is actually in marketing project management and ad tech. So, I mean, it's similar to Anne. It's one of those where you kind of have an inkling that things in your industry are shifting and your curiosity starts to kind of like steer you in that direction. And so with everything that's happening with GDPR and on the horizon, I worked with a media buyer for many years. So I've done everything on the fun side, the creative and ideation side of marketing. I'll get back to that on the MLS with storytelling, so I kind of looked at the common threads of where my career was at, but kind of going, where's the next area that I could align myself, which is more on the regulatory aspect of the technical mechanisms of that industry. So like Anne, I did data privacy and cybersecurity as my focus in the MLS program, and took another conversation as the capstone. Again, we can get into that later. It may not be in today, but just to really explore what excites you, and you'll start to notice common threads across compliance across the industry. And that was a big component of what I took out of the MLS. Myself now, I've transitioned from those roles to privacy program management at a large media publisher. And now I sit on a data ethics team that does data collaboration, which is really, I'm super thrilled to be a part of this team. And it's really a discernment team that kind of serves to look at the ways in which the organization is doing business practices, but also with our products. So yeah, it's great to be here today,
Awesome.
Kelly, and great to be with you, Anne.
Yeah, I'm gonna like go off script here a little bit. I love that you use the word discernment in how you all approach your work, right? I mean, I'm sure that folks have seen on our website, and you both know this well, when we are, oftentimes prospective students are very curious about the Jesuit component of Seattle University, right? And the way that that shows up in the compliance program is very much around this discernment. Like, how do we approach compliance with a conscience, right? But how do we make those decisions around who gets to use the data, how long is it kept for, what is the right thing to do by our customers and our other stakeholders? So yes, lots of discernment, lots of really good questions around here. Well, thank you both. I really appreciate you introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about your career. When I was thinking about kind of how we would chat about the discussion today, I mean, one of the things we want to highlight is the career outcomes that you both have seen. You both have seen really great outcomes in your careers because of the program. But I kind of want to start with the academic experience. Like, what aspects of the program most directly prepared you, do you think, for the roles that you currently hold? Are there particular courses or faculty members or interactions? Especially because, I mean, even though you all come from kind of similar backgrounds in industry, there are so many folks in your cohort that come from different experiences. So I'm curious how that academic experience, those conversations, inform where you're at now. Maybe we'll go in reverse order. Danielle, if you don't mind starting, that'd be great.
Absolutely. When I was thinking about specific coursework, and it's kind of interesting because this came up when I was connecting with my current team, in traditional like JD programs usually don't touch privacy law and you're as a 1L, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, that was in our second year, but I think back to contract law, contract, review and drafting. I think that everyone should have the opportunity to do, legal writing course. Like that will change the way you communicate. That will change the way you think. I mean, it's kind of funny, like IRAC sitting in the back of your head as you're presenting things to leadership and things like that. It's such a great baseline. And let's see, Kelly, what else? What points am I missing to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think wherever you want to go with it is totally fine.
Yeah.
I'm curious to
Yeah, I think the other benefit as far as when I think of the cohort, it was such a diverse set of skills, with all your respective peers. And that only, at first you're kind of like, gosh, we're all speaking different languages, right? Because you're coming from your respective industries. But when you understand, you start circling around those regulatory frameworks that may touch these industries in different ways, then we would have a similar language to speak from. And then you start benefiting from, oh gosh, someone in a healthcare, privacy is going to look at things this way. And you basically are working often in our roles, and I've spoken about this maybe before, is like you can get so siloed in what you're working in your organization, and it's really sometimes just a time gap. You don't have the ability to talk to every team, even though your work is so cross-functional. And so for those two like incubation years in the MLS, you get to be so cross-functional that will just broaden your perspective in such a way that you don't get to do in your day-to-day. I would say my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, that's super important. We hear a lot from our alums, as a compliance professional, you end up being kind of like the the hub of a wheel, right? You're talking to all of these different stakeholders, marketing, sales, customer support, those sorts of things. And that having that experience in the classroom with so many different types of industries can be really helpful. And what are your thoughts on, are there particular courses or faculty interactions that really kind of informed where you are today?
Well, I wanted to echo what Danielle said about legal writing. I think legal writing changes. That was the first course, and I think the only course while I was at Seattle U that I ever received a B. And I was very upset because I said, what? How could I be getting a B? And it was because surprisingly, I had a lot of opinion in my writing, and you're supposed to be a lot more objective. And what that course really taught me was that leadership, particularly executives on the C-level, anyone in the C-suite, they're going to want to hear objective data. And so whatever it is you're passionate about, you can bring the passion to your work, but when you present that data back, in order for it to be actionable, it has to be objective. And that was one of the first classes we took, just right off the bat. So that was one of the best. I will say that for me, just the integration of integrity and ethics into the entire program was integral to my learning, because one of the first things I did as a compliance director was actually implement one of the hotlines for I had worked at. It was a startup, and so by the time it was like 150 employees, and by the time I left, there were like 1,500 employees there.
Wow.
So from a startup, you just don't have those things in place, and to be able to come in and say, you know what, we need an anonymous hotline for our employees to be able to say whatever it is. It doesn't have to be around privacy, cybersecurity, which is my focus, but anything. So it became very practical. So what Danielle said about it being, cross-functional and avoiding those silos, because I worked at primarily audit firms in my compliance career, it was like compliance with audit, compliance with a particular framework, not necessarily compliance with the law. And sometimes the law and they don't exactly line up. And so I always refer to myself as a translator. Used to be, It was just that I translated like super nerd because I was a Unix admin. I could translate super nerd into like compliance understanding. But then once I had the legal background from Seattle U, I was able to really jump in and say, no, let me explain. The lawyers are saying this,
right,
and this is how it can be implemented practically in your cyber functions, because penetration testers and your security engineers, your people who are writing software, they're not going to be able to understand a code of federal regulations. But being able to read those things and come back and say, okay, this is how I see that interpretation, was really, I think that was one of the most valuable things. And that was throughout. That wasn't just one professor. It's throughout the program where you learn that and build that. And it just, it builds on itself, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's interesting, it kind of segues well into kind of the career trajectory. You both seen promotions, and certainly we don't need to talk like hard numbers or details. I get the question a lot from students that are like, what are career outcomes? Like, what can I expect after this program? And my 2 cents, I'm kind of curious what your perspectives are given your careers. It's, not everybody wants to go and get a JD, right? A JD is a huge commitment. And for the most part, you're trained in litigation. But there are all of these roles we call JD advantage roles, right? Where it's like you have a JD, you're trained in litigation, you know how to read and synthesize the law, but you're not actually working in a courtroom. And that's where the MLS tends to line up really well, because you're trained in a lot of the legal research, the writing, the structure, and able to take those skills into your respective industries. And so the titles, you know, you're not going to see an attorney title, of course, but you do see like compliance director, compliance manager. I'm curious what some of the other roles that students might look out for as they are looking to take this MLS degree and go out into the world. What do you all see as you're hiring, as you're looking at job recs? And then I'm also curious, Danielle, if you could share kind of how you landed a JD Advantage role. It's just, I don't think our students think to look at those sometimes. Either of you can jump in. Happy to. Yeah, go ahead, Danielle.
I was going to say, Anne, would you like to go first?
Sure, I can jump in. I always like this question. It's one of my favorite things because I got a huge salary bump, just a huge salary bump because I started, like I said, it was audit compliance. And so when someone saw compliance director, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And they were paying me to be a compliance director so that I could sit in this role. And I was doing the best I could and kind of floundering. But then when I realized, oh no, this has real world implications. And as soon as I realized, you know, came into with the legal background and was able to say, no, I attended law school. I might not have my JD, but I attended law school. And for that, I expect to be compensated. And I was
you know,
very direct. Yeah, very direct about it. And I had return on investment within about a year and a half.
That's awesome.
And yeah. So, and I will say that the company that I went to at the time that was supporting me going through this did give me kind of I don't know, I think it was $5,000 a year as like kind of a scholarship to go to. So that's something else you can look at in your organizations is, do you have a continuing education program? And so they did cover that, and that was a dent. That was a significant dent. But I still had some personalized experience, and so that personalized, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to say, I guess, but that. You know, coming in and just saying, you know, here's my background and here's what I learned, and it cost me this much money. I'm not getting any younger. I gotta make return on their investment, and I did very quickly. So, and I'm still making money. It wasn't like I said, okay, now you can take my salary back down. Yeah. No, my salary stayed where it needs to be, and I think it just keeps going up, keeps improving.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think people don't realize, you know, law school, like on the JD track, is about 4 times more than an MLS. And it's only increasing, right? And this is like no judgment on folks who want to pursue a JD. It's a very valuable degree, given a different career trajectory. And so I think the MLS, I think sometimes people forget that it is very much law school. It is, it's rigorous in the same ways. It's a little bit shorter, but that the ROI tends to be a little bit higher because you've got, because it's a less expensive degree.
Well, and you don't have to litigate, right?
Right.
So we don't have to do any of the, like, you know, pretend. It's not pretend. What is that, Kelly? When you go up in your like the moot court, that's what I was thinking. And like mock things like that. Like you don't do any of that in an MLS, but you are very definitely doing the work of, let me do some research in law, and it's more than a paralegal.
Mm-hmm.
It's less than what a lawyer would do. But I always have thought like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer one day. And I found this, and I found the sweet spot of where I wanted to be, where maybe I didn't really want to be a lawyer. I just wanted to know enough to make a difference. And that I'm still making a difference where I am.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Danielle, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. As far as, you know, I share with Kelly, in preparing for the webinar, the recent role that I'm at on a data ethics team, it is, I sit among attorneys and we work as a team unit in that discernment spot. So it's interesting as far as like for perspective, looking at the current students and perspective is like, shoot your shot. Like I actually went back to the original language because I thought that would be the most helpful. And it was posted for, a bachelor degree in a relevant field, law, business, ethics, others, JD, or equivalent combination of education. I'm not sure there's like, to me, an MBA does not hit the nail on the head for equivalent combination of education on this specific area, They wanted 5 years in, several areas of data ethics, governance, data management, legal compliance. Like it was the sweeping where I was like, for me, I was like, this role was exactly like, and that was it. I was like, I'd say my MLS cemented the intentionality of the career path I was building. It came from an industry that was shaking up a little bit, like I say, regulations coming in.
Wow.
And so I can take all my previous knowledge of those industries and then bring it to what is really the apex of that's doing this work. So now it's interesting because in program management, it's my goodness, like which I think the program also really prepared me for. It was very much broad of like, thinking of risk as a heat map. And you have to kind of understand and you can lean on those frameworks and you're able to touch what you can. But then there are roles as far as like when you ask about what is expanding, it's more niche and niche and niche, and I do see data ethics as continuing to grow because when you look at the regulatory environment, we have handfuls of state laws. We've got, federal regulations that are also governing things. And so this patchwork, as we often hear about, you do need to get some base level principle understanding of like, how can I make the most effective impact, and it's understanding that will really help you. And that's what I think the MLS does. It gives you this foundational understanding of, because I would say probably speaking on my realm as well, those that are exploring privacy could go IAPP and could go to the certification route, but it is a very singular specific route to take. And that may work for some roles, but if you want to broaden to the more team approach of compliance and ethics, like a program like this, very well suited for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been really fun to watch both of you and your cohorts really like expand and broaden and kind of take those leadership roles and take these skills in there. I'm curious, are there any doors that this opened that you were not expecting? And how, as you stepped into some of your leadership roles, what skills or what things do you kind of think back on like, oh, wow, I do this better because of the program? And why don't we go ahead and start with you again?
Yeah. Well, I think everything I did was better. I don't know how to break down because it was so comprehensive and across multiple verticals of thought. So I think Danielle had mentioned, talking to someone who was in healthcare, there's obviously HIPAA. And so coming from a compliance background, I knew auditors who audited to HIPAA. And there's one P in HIPAA, and it is not privacy. And people forget that all the time. There's a privacy rule, but it's about portability. And so I would get into discussions with people who are in healthcare, who work in banking, who work in these different areas. And from that learning, I was able to say, although cybersecurity is a growing field still, I'm not limited to this field because of this degree. Whereas before I was very limited because of those certifications that Danielle mentioned. You get the certifications and you're stuck. I had ISO certifications, like quality management certifications that were specific to the program, and they required CPEs, and so I was going to all the same conferences. And now I'm able to, I went to the Rocky Mountain Information Security Conference, for example, in Denver, and there was a whole track about executive orders for the legal team. And that's where I found myself on that whole hallway. I was just going from you know, where I would have been in on the Unix side or the implementation side or the software side before.
Yeah.
And what drives my energy and my passion now is about those types of things, like how are these things being integrated into the law? And Danielle mentioned, like with privacy, it was like, oh, GDPR, this is huge. So that GDPR, the law that can forth. AI, everyone's talking about AI, and no one is talking about the implications of what AI does until you start to look at the lawyers. The lawyers are looking at the AI, the implications of AI. And so now there's an ISO standard coming out of Europe, and Europe is requiring, there's laws coming out now around AI. And so that's like the new frontier. And it was the legal team that was like, oh, no, these AI hallucinations are real, and we need to start putting some controls around these. So even though that sits in the cybersecurity realm, that crosses over into absolutely every industry.
Yeah.
So I think I would not have been as open to changing fields, to looking at jobs in other places, to do without this background from this degree. It just kind of opened my eyes to what the possibilities were, and I wasn't just going to be stuck, because I get bored very easily. That my friends said, like, oh, what you excelling at your job isn't enough. You've got to go to law school and now show off. And I was like, no, I want to keep learning. And this degree allowed me to keep learning, because I'm still learning every day. Like, I'm just taking the things that I had, and I graduated 4 years ago, and I'm still taking the learnings. I bought the legal books, and they're still sitting on my shelf. And I'm following Danielle Solov, for example, on LinkedIn, and I'm getting like these updates because I just found what I learned at Seattle U so valuable. It kind of changes the way you think, and it should. And you should have that lifelong learning, because you stop learning and you just stop growing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 notes before I kind of hand off to Danielle. We hear a lot from our students and our alums that people ask me what the curriculum's like, and it's very foundational. We're very focused on making sure that you can research, synthesize, communicate out the law, because the law is going to change, right? So 4 years after graduation, it's going to be different, right? So I can teach you the law today, but what's really important to us is that you know how to research, because it's going to be different. And what does that look like in 4 years? How do you take all of these lessons and continue to grow? So yeah, I think your point's super valuable. Danielle, any other thoughts to add?
It's funny as you said that. It's like, even when you're interviewing places and like, and you're talking to a legal team, I was like, oh, I've had to chase key site flags down. Like, and it gives them a chuckle. You know what I mean? As far as like, gosh, I will never forget that matrix we had to fill out for that one.
But I know exactly which assignment you're talking
about.
Yeah,
that one, you're like, what? And then you understand it. You go through, and that's where I think, you're growing that muscle, like you're talking about.
And the lawyers in the room really appreciate that. Like, I imagine, right, as you're looking at those JD Advantage roles, as you're communicating with your counsel on in-house counsel, they really appreciate that you understand the language that they speak, right? And I'm sure that the technical people really understand that, like, what a Unix, like on the security side, what that requires, right? So being able to speak both languages is really helpful.
Yeah.
I will say I reported directly to chief legal. The last 2 roles I was at, they just said, we're not doing CISO. You report directly to chief legal, because that legal background was there. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Sorry, Danielle. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. I think it's, Kelly, you're thinking about, like, again, specific moments when we know how it changed how we approach our work, right?
Yeah.
And I thought of one prior. It's kind of funny. On my second week at my new org, we had all the leadership in town in the Seattle office. And, everyone's trying to find their spot and their space within there. And so I was kind of in a shared working space, just getting to know everyone. And it was our CISO and the GRC team that had flown in, and we talked for hours. It was just like, so being able to be dropped into a new organization, have the right language to learn from them of how this particular organization approaches things, but be able to identify, just drop in like that. Like that was wonderful, and just praise and respect their work. Because I do think one of the other key takeaways of the program is you can't have privacy without security. And that's why that's, presented that way in the program. And that's huge. So, I think it was just, it was just one of those good moments where you kind of go, I can add value to this organization, not only, but I also can connect with them on a human level of the pride they take in their jobs and their respective roles. Although I don't do the nuance of all that, I've learned bits and pieces and worked with peers that are solving those problems. So that's huge. That is absolutely huge.
Yeah, totally. So I'm curious, one last question. This is like my favorite question to ask of our alums is if you could, I'm curious, like if you could go back and give your own perspective self some advice, 5, 6 years ago, whenever you were kind of looking at the program, what do you wish you had known before starting the program?
Well, I'll just jump in and say that towards the end of the program, the capstone scared me to death. Like just looking at the capstone and it being so big, and like because you could, the professors were very direct about how this means to help you while also not being with your current job, because that's kind of a conflict of interest. So you have to figure out like how can this help you, and then you realize, oh, this is so broad, and then once you get this big thing, you're like, oh, this is so big and this is so much. And I pushed off so much on that capstone until it clicked for me. Like it didn't have to be so broad. I could narrow it down. It could be something that I cared about on a personal level, which was privacy around children, but still tie into, what I needed to learn, and just not to be afraid of the capstone. And we all have stuff going on. I had a very important job. I'm a mom. I had,
you were homeschooling at the time because we were all home.
Yes, because it was 2020. I had, a very lovely and amazing spouse who has supported me through all of this for whatever I decide to do. But that's all work, right? And I thought, oh, the capstone is just going to be something I'm not going to, maybe I've learned enough. Maybe I don't actually need the degree. That was kind of like in my head, was like, do I actually have to finish the capstone? And so just pushing myself to be like, no, you actually have to finish the capstone, finish it and get the degree. And it was just it culminated, everything that I had learned culminated into this beautiful package at the end. So if I could go back to student Anne and say, first, don't be afraid of the capstone, one. And also but prior to doing law school, just, I wish I would have said, yeah, join this program. Like maybe you don't want to be a lawyer, but this program will help you. Like I waited so long to actually do it, to step in and do either, because I was like LLM, MLS, like what do I want to do? I don't know. And then the pandemic happened. So you never know what's going to happen. Totally. So if we don't know what the future's like, none of us has a crystal ball, do it now. Like why wait? Because you will get that return on investment. You will. I don't know anybody from that cohort that I was with that didn't end up better today than they were before they started.
Yeah, for sure. Danielle, what would you tell your earlier self?
Well, Frank will chuckle. Don't boil the ocean.
Yes.
It was a great one you take away from your coursework, especially in that capstone, and you're going to take it into your professional environments as well.
For sure.
Because you can go on an infinite regression of, especially compliance. Well, what about this controller? What about this? And you have to, again, from that risk management lens of go, where's the best, spot to spend effort, resources to mitigate this. And you have to do the same with your coursework. Don't be afraid to be bold. You have a .edu address. So talking to current students, prospective students, in my capstone, I went after, I looked at, food safety. Okay. I currently do not work in food safety, but this is what I'm saying. There's common threads. And it's interesting that linguistically too, there's things that, like we talk about data clean rooms, so same thing with food safety and preparation as far as what surfaces you're using. Like there's a lot of parallels, but with that .edu address, so with current students, do not be afraid to network while you're currently in the program and whatever effort you're currently doing. As far as, it may seem like a lot with your coursework, but I would actually advocate, like, just challenge yourself to do, 2 informational outreaches a month, and just get something on your calendar. Here's what I'm working on. Would love your perspective on, and build your network in the area that you're either currently in or which way you're steering. And so then when you're looking for completion and, what's your next level, and some don't even need to wait. I should also emphasize that a lot of peers in the cohort too, they could take their learnings, implement it right then. And we're looking for those next job opportunities within the first 3 to 6 months of enrolling in the MLS.
Yeah.
It's a huge, again, you just kind of find yourself speaking a different language than you did before you had the program.
Yes.
It changes the framework of your thinking. So, just don't be afraid to be bold, and you're being curious and you're learning. So continue that curiosity beyond that to broaden, what opportunities you can reach.
No, that's great. As we kind of like
Can I
wrap up.
comment?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Anne.
I just wanted to comment on something Danielle said. We were not in the same cohort. Danielle and I were separate. We were, I think, 2 years apart from graduation.
Yeah.
And I got a peek at her capstone because when I heard about it, I was so interested. So if you think about that, we weren't in the same cohort, but we are in the same network now. We're in the same network. I count Danielle as a colleague and a friend. I've never worked with her, but she is a colleague of mine because of the connection at Seattle U. And we're in different fields, but I know that if I had a question, I could safely reach out to Danielle, and I know she feels the same way about me. It's like we would be able to reach out to each other and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at in my professional career. What's going, and how often can you say that? Like, I have this whole team of people that are wanting me to succeed. And it's almost without trying, right? I mean, you do have to reach out and make those connections, but having that common thread of the university and the type of learning, and I can't emphasize enough the integrity and the ethics of the learning, that was the big difference between this program and any other program. Even if it's online or in person, it doesn't matter. The integrity and the ethics of what I learned here was just fantastic. And so having Danielle as a colleague and a friend just came out of being part of the same program. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll add too that we do, we try and make sure that you all are able to stay connected, right? Like we have a group online that if folks are, on the same platform, like, can join the group, and we'll post jobs there as we come across them and stuff like that. So we've had alums hire other students. We've had students move different careers after chatting with somebody about, they were in compliance in healthcare and then they wanted to move over to data. So it's a pretty cool network to see you all kind of like helping each other out. It's very fun, from my view. Well, I want to thank you both. And then for the prospective students that are on the call, just some deadlines coming up. Our classes in the spring start a little bit later this year. We've moved some things around on the academic calendar. So we're starting on January 20th. We are accepting applications up until December, but scholarships are going to be prioritized early November. And my information is right here, and students feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Happy to help. Danielle, and thank you both so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and thoughts. Really, really appreciate you both, and wishing you the best of luck. Feel free to reach out if we can ever help you too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
I feel honored.
And likewise, I was going to say the same to you, Anne. It is a very supportive network. So, I mean, it's just, I'm so grateful for that, and you are just coming from those same learnings. And even the compliance with the conscience is truly lived and, brought into each of our practices. So it's lovely knowing we all have that to put on together.
For sure.
Yep.
Thank you both so much. I really appreciate your time and everything. Have a really good day.
Thank you.
You
Yeah.
too.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye-bye.